In a quiet little village in Wales, close to the English-Welsh border, in an unassuming little church, lies the legend of the Roaring Bull of Bagbury. Hello and welcome to another episode in our dive into the fairy tale folktale legends. Today we are doing a English or Welsh one, depending on which side you're on, called the Roaring Bull of Bagbury. This was included in Joseph Jacobs' collection of fairy tales published in 1890. His source was recorded as Georgina Jackson, who published it in her collection of Shropshire Folklore in 1883, and in turn her source was recorded as an old farmer by the name of Hayward in 1881. Now there are several different variants of this tale and several different endings that go with it, so we will be putting together a mishmash of the full tale that, as I see, makes it read a lot better, with two endings. So our tale opens with a very bad farmer who lived at Bagbury Farm, and he was so mean that he only ever did two good things in his life. One was give a waistcoat to a poor man from the cold, and two was to give some bread and cheese to a poor child. And that was it. So this man was so mean that he was cursed by a passing witch, who just decided to fuck up his day because he was an arsehole. There's no explanation for why, I just like that explanation. And the curse was that when he died, his soul would take on the form of a bull and would terrorise the village and cause havoc. How that was a curse on only him, or whether the village pissed her off, you never get to know, but why she would curse this mean guy to terrorise the local village after he was dead. Now, to see a bull coming towards you in a lane at night is not the most agreeable of spectacles, but when that bull roars and positively rushes at you and is accompanied by an unearthly glow of green light, it's apt to be downright scary, and those who encountered it were invariably terrified. One woman is said to have had a fit forthwith, another to have just dropped down dead from shock, and a farmer was thrown from his stampeding horse and injured. So many accidents and widespread terror did this bull cause that the villagers finally got together and decided that the church had to intervene with this unholy demon, and it was about time that they did. And they finally asked the local preacher and his preacher friends to come in and lay it, which is an exorcism, more or less. Which brings a whole new meaning to the phrase getting laid. Who knew it would have come from the church, those frisky bunch. Consequently, 12 parsons, not 13, 12 parsons, along with Bibles and candles and all the things that they would need, waited in a lane for the ghost to appear at night. And after it rushed past them, bellowing in a horrible manner, they ran after it, down one turning and another all the way through the village, with the panting, perspiring and undaunted clergy in hot pursuit. And when I first read this, what popped in my just imagining a load of vicars running through a village with Bibles and candles in hand, chasing after a bull in the dead of night, panting their arse off, and no doubt tripping over their frock, dress, cassock. It was just very amusing to me. I found it quite funny. So they ended up driving the bull up to Hissington Church. Hissington? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, but I'm going to go with Hissington because I just am. Now, all 12 parsons carried candles, and one of the parsons, who was old and blind, and why he'd come on this mission, what good could he do, really? Old and blind, but able to run through the village in the dark. So, now this old blind parson had known the farmer when he was alive and was really, really mean, and knew what kind of a fuss he was going to make in their attempt to exorcise him. And he carried his candle in the top of his boot. How it didn't set fire to his clothing, I don't know, but it's a legend, let's go with it. So when the bull made a great rush around the church and all the other parsons' candles went out, The blind parson's candle remained lit, and he said, "Light your candles from mine." So they managed to get the bull inside the church, not just the grounds, but inside the actual building. And they locked the doors tight, and before the parsons were able to begin this exorcism, the bull let out such an unholy roar of anger and fury that he cracked the wall of the church from top to bottom, and the crack was left there for years for people to see and remember what had happened, until the church was renovated. And funnily enough, there's no pictures that survive. Now, when they got the bull finally exorcised, and they shrank his soul down so that it would fit in a snuff box, because that's what you do apparently, they don't get to fly away, his soul laughed at them from this box and asked them to lay him to rest under the local Bagbury Bridge. And he said that every mare that passed over this bridge would lose her foal, and every woman that walked over this bridge would lose her child. He sounds an absolute delight. But of course the parsons refused completely, and one version has they laid him in the Red Sea, a continent away, where he remained for thousands of years, and the snuff box is still there. A lot of exorcisms in folktales end up with the exorcised soul thrown in the Red Sea for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. More variants of this tale, and the ending that I particularly like, is they have the snuff box being laid under the church steps so that the soul would always be trapped on holy ground, which makes more sense to me. Now, the steps have strange markings on them, which have been attributed by the village to be caused by the unholy bull's fiery hooves, but there's no pictures that I can find of those either. Now, one of the tellers of this tale, a man by the name of John Thomas, added that despite the snuff box's banishment to the Red Sea, folk were always frightened to go over Bagbury Bridge, including himself whenever he went near it, and if he had to ride his horse over it, he got off the horse and walked it slowly and quietly over the bridge so as not to disturb the eternal rest of him. Such is the legend of the Roaring Bull of Bagbury. Cracks in the wall of the old St Etheldreda's church in the village of Hissington were seen as a corroboration of this legend. In fact, there's a known history of earth tremors in the area, which, apart from causing cracks to the church wall, could be responsible for the other damage to the village, the buildings being shaken, and the rumblings that were heard at night. Now, the church was rebuilt in 1875. 6 years before, this tale was told to Georgina Jackson, who published it in 1881. Now, it is believed that there was an ox-worshipping cult in Britain at the time, before the arrival of Christianity, and I can believe it. And that this area, particularly, was populated by farmers and cattle and community. Stone circles that are around this area also signify the religious community that was there, not necessarily Christians. Many of them have been destroyed, but there still exist the 14 stones of Mitchell's Fold on the end of Stapley Hill. And so the story of the Bagbury Bull might just be a folk memory of the confrontation between the arrival of Christianity and its confrontation with the old religion of ancient Britain. The pagan ox/bull being brought down by the good, pure Christians and symbolically buried by the new faith. And like many other churches, St Etheldreda's was probably built on an existing worshipping site to ensure the continuity of worship. Another interesting point is that certain poisonous toadstools, dried and ingested in very minute doses by prehistoric shamans, could induce the feeling of growing and of shrinking, and as such they're an important feature in many, many legends, along with Alice in Wonderland. So it could just be that a load of villagers got themselves high on mushrooms and mistook something for a bull running through their village or started hallucinating. I don't know, but that's quite amusing to me. Now, around the turn of the century, it is said that some revellers were drinking one Saturday night at an inn in Churchstoke in Powys, which isn't far from Hissington. And as the night went on and the more drinks they consumed, one of them suggested that they go to Hissington Church, as it wasn't very far, and they dig up the bull to see if the legend was actually true. So they made their way drunkenly to the church, as you do, and spades in hand, only to be forcefully turned back at the church gates by a group of Hissington men, who told them to go home and forget what they intended. And it is well that they heard of their plans in time, as the willful act of desecration would have unleashed a terrible power on the village and themselves, putting all their souls into eternal jeopardy, and they wouldn't be able to get the bull back down. Now, this event says something about the regard the locals have for their legend, but whether or not the last episode actually took place really depends on the extent of the rebuilding of the church. Was the doorstep of the church lifted and the bull escaped? Now, if it was, the legend says that the bull will grow to an enormous size and terrorise the parish once more. One would like to think that it remains undisturbed, but I am recently told of a man who swears up and down that he came face to face with the spirit of an angry bull in the lane one winter's night. So I shall leave it up to you to decide. Is the legend true? Does a spirit of a bull really reside under the Hissington church steps? Or is this just a tale of a crowd of farmers high on mushrooms? Anyway, let me know down in the comments, and as always, keep reading.